So what if I told you that just by swapping out maybe 3 basic words in your next university essay, or even your next big corporate presentation, you could literally trick a grading algorithm into thinking you have a PhD.
Right.
Or, I mean, at the very least, instantly signal to whoever is grading or listening to you that you operate on, like, an entirely different intellectual level.
I mean, I know it sounds like a total gimmick.
Yeah, it totally does.
But it's actually the foundational mechanics of how academic and professional language is evaluated. It's the secret language of the elite, really.
You know, usually when we think about language fluency, there's this expectation of a smooth, continuous road. Like, you learn the basic grammar, you pick up some conversational slang.
All right, the everyday stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You figure out how to order coffee without sounding like a total tourist, and suddenly you're cruising. You can navigate a new city. You can banter at the water cooler. You can read the room during a casual meeting. And, you know, it feels like you've made it. You feel completely fluent.
Yeah, you've reached this plateau of comfort. The road is paved, the scenery is nice, and your brain isn't, working overtime just to construct a single sentence.
Yes, exactly. It's this comfortable paved road.
Yeah.
But then, and this is where it gets crazy, you decide you want to step into the world of global academia.
Oh, yeah. That's a different beast.
Right. You sit down to take a university entrance exam, or you open this dense sociology textbook, or, I don't know, you step into a boardroom to defend a really complex thesis, and suddenly that smooth road just entirely vanishes.
Poof, gone.
The asphalt is gone.
Yeah.
You are suddenly standing at the bottom of a sheer vertical cliff face.
Oh.
And all those conversational tools you brought with you, like the water cooler banter, they are completely useless up there.
It is the absolute definition of the intermediate trap. And it's an incredibly frustrating, almost demoralizing place to be for a lot of learners.
Oh, I bet.
Because, you feel like you know the language, but the second you try to read a passage on geology or like ancient anthropology, you feel completely illiterate all over again.
It really is a trap.
Yeah.
And that is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are throwing you a rope to help you scale that cliff face.
I love that visual.
We are rescuing you from the intermediate trap of casual fluency. So today, we are diving into the core curriculum of this intensive masterclass designed to build what they call an academic arsenal.
Which is just such a fitting term, honestly, because entering these academic spaces without the right vocabulary really is it's like going into a rigorous intellectual battle unarmed.
Totally.
You can have the best ideas in the entire world, but if you don't have the ammunition to defend them, your ideas will just get torn apart.
Completely. And before we dive into the specific vocabulary, we really need to make this crucial distinction right out of the gate. The vocabulary you use to survive a corporate scandal, or to navigate office politics, or to participate in the whole whisper network of a company.
Yeah, that's completely different.
Right. That is a completely different language than what you need to survive dense scientific passages. Today we are talking about the language of geology, ancient history, evolutionary biology, macroeconomics.
And the stakes here are incredibly high for the listener, whether you are aiming to conquer university entrance exams or you're trying to break that elusive 100-plus score on tests like the TOEFL or the IELTS.
Which is so hard to do.
It's brutal. Or frankly, if you just want to elevate the way you communicate complex ideas in your professional life, your basic everyday vocabulary simply won't cut it anymore.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have a massive arsenal to get through today. 50 high-level terms broken down into distinct academic themes based on the masterclass notes. But before we get to the actual words, I want to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Why do we even need this? I mean, why do I have to upgrade from simple phrases like the author says or the professor thinks?
Yeah.
Why is there such a massive penalty for using simple, clear, everyday words in global academia? Is this just a giant exercise in sounding pretentious?
That is the perfect question to start with, actually. And it is a very, very common frustration.
I say that all the time.
Right. But I assure you, it is not about sounding pretentious. It's not about wearing a tweed jacket with elbow patches and looking down your nose at people.
Okay, good.
Academic arenas demand absolute scientific accuracy. When a scientist or a historian presents a theory, they aren't just saying something casually over coffee. Simple verbs lack the structural integrity required to hold up a complex argument.
Oh, wow. So simple words are just too blurry.
Exactly. They are blurry. If you say, the data shows my theory is right, well, what does shows actually mean in that context?
Right.
Did the data create the theory? Did it support it? Did it just happen to exist at the exact same time? Simple verbs don't have enough grip. They slip. And in academia, if your language slips, your entire thesis collapses.
They don't have enough grip for that cliff face we're climbing. Love that. Okay, well, that seamlessly brings us to our first category of the arsenal from the notes, the verbs of academic argument. Because before we can even begin to explore the vast universe or the complexities of human society, we first have to understand the mechanics of how academics actually argue and frame their theories.
This is the foundation. If you don't know how to argue, you cannot participate in academia. It really is that simple.
Let's start with how we build and destroy theories. We often want to say that two things agree with each other. But instead of saying the data agrees with the professor, the source says we need to upgrade to the verb corroborate.
Yes, to corroborate. This is a massive C2 level indicator for grading algorithms.
Why, though? Like, what makes it better than just saying agree or prove?
What's fascinating here is how the word corroborate functions mechanically in a sentence. It's not just two people having the same opinion over lunch. It is the specific act of confirming or giving support to a statement, a theory, or a finding by providing brand new, often physical, evidence.
Okay, let's make that concrete for the listener.
Sure. Think about paleontology. You might have a professor who has this wild theory about the sudden extinction of the dinosaurs. Maybe they think it was a massive volcanic event, not an asteroid.
Okay, so that's just a theory.
Right, it's just a theory. But then a team digs up a new set of fossils surrounded by very specific ash layers. The fossil record corroborates the professor's theory.
Oh, I see. So the fossils aren't just agreeing with him. They're acting as the structural pillar that literally holds the professor's theory up.
Exactly. You bring in an outside witness to strengthen the case. That is corroboration.
That makes total sense. And right on the other side of that coin is how we destroy a theory. Instead of saying the lecturer thinks the reading is wrong, we use the verb refute.
To refute, which means to prove a statement or theory to be completely wrong or false.
I see this dynamic constantly in standardized tests.
Yeah.
You'll read a passage about how a certain economic policy was brilliant and successful, and then you have to listen to a lecturer who absolutely refutes it by bringing up, like, terrible unemployment data.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture of academic testing, this dynamic of corroborating and refuting is the entire engine of reading and listening comprehension.
It really is.
You are constantly being asked to identify who is building a theory up and who is tearing it down. It's almost never just a polite disagreement.
I like to think of it like a courtroom trial.
Yep.
To corroborate is the lawyer painstakingly laying down the foundation of the case piece by piece, bringing in the evidence, the witnesses, the fingerprints to build this solid wall.
Right.
But to refute, on the other hand, is the opposing lawyer taking a giant sledgehammer to that exact same wall. It's total destruction of the argument.
That's a highly accurate analogy. And it leads us nicely into the next pair of verbs, which deal with a slightly different kind of impact.
Okay.
In the real world and in most scientific papers, we rarely see total creation or total destruction. We usually deal with degrees of harm.
Right, because we aren't always curing things or completely destroying things. Sometimes we're just trying to survive them. And this brings us to a pair of words that are absolute gold for any essay dealing with environmental science or public policy.
Yeah.
We have mitigate and exacerbate.
Let's unpack mitigate first.
Okay, so to mitigate means to make something bad less severe, less harmful, or less painful. So if I have a massive headache, I mitigate the pain by taking an aspirin. I don't necessarily cure the underlying cause of the headache, but I take the edge off.
Precisely. In an academic context, let's say you are writing an essay on urban planning. A student trapped in the intermediate level might write, "Planting trees fixes air pollution."
Oh, yeah.
A grader sees that and immediately docks points because planting trees absolutely does not fix or cure all the pollution coming from millions of cars. It's scientifically inaccurate.
It's too blurry again.
Exactly. But if you write, "Planting trees in urban areas helps to mitigate the severe effects of air pollution," well, you have just demonstrated precise scientific thinking.
It's a much more diplomatic, accurate word.
And its direct counterpart is exacerbate. This means to make a bad situation, a disease, or a problem significantly worse.
Okay, let's stick with urban planning. A city has terrible traffic congestion. The city council decides to build a massive new highway right through the center of town.
A classic mistake.
Right. They think it will help, but during the 5 years of construction, it completely paralyzes the city. The new highway project didn't just fail, it exacerbated the traffic congestion.
The nuance here is critical for the listener. Notice that neither mitigate nor exacerbate implies a final conclusion.
Right, the pollution still exists.
And the traffic still exists. These verbs deal strictly with adjusting the severity of a problem that already exists and is likely going to continue existing.
It's basically the volume dial on a problem.
Yeah.
You're either turning the harm down or you're turning it way up. If you use mitigate and exacerbate in an essay discussing solutions to a global crisis, you instantly sound like a real policymaker.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to the precision of thought. How do academics actually map out their ideas? We have two fantastic verbs here from the notes, delineate and postulate.
Let's look at delineate. The Latin root here actually contains the word line. To delineate means to describe, portray, or outline something with absolute precise detail. You are literally drawing a line around a concept to separate it from everything else.
I've noticed this word is crucial when analyzing historical texts. Like, you're reading about the French Revolution, the author isn't just talking about it, why it happened. The author clearly delineates the three primary causes, like economic hardship, social inequality, and political corruption.
Precision is the key word there. When an author delineates, they are drawing sharp, undeniable boundaries around a concept so the reader cannot possibly misunderstand what is being discussed.
But what if the author doesn't have all the facts yet? Like, what if they are just guessing? That brings us to postulate.
Right, but I would caution against calling it a guess.
Oh, really? Why?
To postulate is to suggest or assume the existence, fact, or truth of something as a basis for reasoning or a scientific theory.
Walk me through that. How is that different from guessing?
Well, a guess is random. A postulation is a necessary logical leap. Think about astronomy. Astronomers can't see every single planet in the outer galaxy, but they observe the gravitational pull on certain stars.
Okay.
So based on that math, they postulate that millions of undiscovered planets must exist. They assume these planets are there so that they can build the mathematical framework to eventually, hopefully, go find them.
Oh man, the contrast between delineate and postulate is brilliant. Delineation is mapping out exactly what we already know with a fine-tip pen. Postulation is standing at the edge of the known universe and throwing a logical anchor into the dark. You don't know exactly what it's going to hook onto, but you needed to pull yourself forward.
Throwing a logical anchor into the dark, that is a perfect way to internalize the concept of postulation.
We are building some serious tools here. Let's look at our next pair of verbs, which deal with highlighting and redeeming. The first is underscore.
To underscore is a powerful visual synonym for emphasize or highlight. Literally, to draw a line under something.
So if I'm reading an article about climate change and the author brings up a massive, unexpected drop in global temperatures, that fact underscores the urgent need for international climate legislation. It draws a heavy, bold line under the argument, so you can't ignore it.
Exactly. But let's look at its partner in this category, which is much more complex, to vindicate.
Yes, to vindicate. To clear someone of blame or suspicion, or to prove that an unpopular idea was actually correct all along.
Right.
Let's say a scientist is mocked for decades because he thinks a certain type of DNA operates differently than everyone else believes. He loses his funding, he gets laughs at conferences. But 20 years later, new microscopic technology is invented, and it turns out he was right. The new evidence completely vindicates his controversial theory.
It's a great example, but let me ask you this. Why use vindicate instead of just saying the new technology proved him right?
Well, I mean, isn't it basically the same thing? If you're vindicated, you're proven right.
This raises a vital question about the emotional weight of academic vocabulary. If you look closely at how this word is deployed in high-level writing, it's not just about being factually correct in a vacuum. It's specifically about being proven right after a period of being mocked, blamed, or socially exiled.
Oh, I see. So it has baggage.
Exactly. To be vindicated carries a profound sense of redemption. Proven right is cold, sterile, and factual. Vindicated tells a story of struggle, opposition, and eventual triumph against the consensus.
Wow.
When you use vindicate in an essay, you are showing the greater that you understand the historical context of the scientific discovery, not just the raw data.
That is a massive distinction. Like Galileo wasn't just proven right about the Earth orbiting the sun, he was vindicated by history.
Perfect said.
Okay, the final academic steps in our verb category. We have scrutinize and synthesize. Let's start with scrutinize.
To examine or inspect something very closely and critically. This is the magnifying glass of academia.
Like when an editorial board reviews a research paper before publishing it. They don't just, casually read it. They rigorously scrutinize the researcher's methodology. They look for any possible flaw, any biased data, any leaped conclusion.
You subject the work to intense, unforgiving pressure to see if it cracks. If it survives scrutiny, it is deemed academically sound.
And finally, the ultimate goal of all this academic reading and writing, to synthesize, which means to combine a number of different things into a single, cohesive, and logical whole.
Synthesis is perhaps the highest cognitive skill we've discussed so far. A lot of students confuse synthesis with summary.
Let's clear that up for the listener, because tests like the TOEFL specifically have an integrated writing task where you are graded entirely on your ability to synthesize. So how is it different from summarizing?
A summary is just a list of what you read. The reading said A, B, and C. The lecture said X, Y, and Z. That will get you an intermediate score.
Right, that's just recounting facts.
Exactly. Synthesis is a chemical reaction. You aren't just listing the raw materials, you are melting them down to forge a completely new unified argument. You take a theory you've scrutinized, you take the evidence that corroborates it, you take the opposing view you've refuted, and you weave them together to show how they relate.
Like saying, the lecturer refutes the reading's postulation by corroborating a new theory with empirical data.
Yes. You just used 4 of the verbs we discussed to perfectly synthesize a complex academic dynamic.
We have officially survived the verbs, and there is a very deliberate logic to why the source material started here. We began with verbs because before we can explore the universe, we have to know how academics argue.
Precisely.
But now that we have the verbs to debate, we need the adjectives to measure the scope of what we are arguing about.
You cannot meaningfully debate geology, biology, or ancient history without defining exactly how long things last and how widespread they are.
Welcome to Section 2, Adjectives of Time and Scale. We start with the extremes of existence. First up is ubiquitous.
A fantastic word, derived from Latin ubique, meaning everywhere. It means present, appearing, or found absolutely everywhere at the same time.
The most obvious modern example is the smartphone. Smartphones have become so ubiquitous that it is genuinely shocking to see someone functioning in society without one.
And we should contrast that immediately with its absolute opposite, ephemeral, meaning lasting for a very short, fleeting amount of time.
I see this word used a lot in biology and, honestly, in poetry. Like the beauty of a cherry blossom is ephemeral. It blooms, it looks spectacular for about 3 days, and then the petals fall and it's gone.
What's fascinating here is how these two words perfectly capture the dichotomy of the world we live in. We use ubiquitous to describe the modern manufactured world, the inescapable presence of technology, plastic, advertising.
Right.
While ephemeral is almost exclusively used to describe the natural world, the delicate, fleeting, organic life cycle of a flower or a rare weather phenomenon.
Let me test the usage with you then. Could I say a funny meme on the internet is ubiquitous?
Well, you could if everyone in the world is looking at it in that exact moment, but I would strongly caution against it. A meme is actually a perfect example of something that is ephemeral.
Oh, because it doesn't last.
Exactly. It exists, it burns bright, and a week later, no one remembers it. Ubiquitous implies a structural permanence to the everywhereness. Oxygen is ubiquitous. Smartphones are ubiquitous. A viral video is ephemeral.
That's a great danger zone tip for the listener. Don't use ubiquitous for trends. Okay, moving into our next subcategory, rhythms and frequencies. How often do things happen? Let's look at perennial, sporadic, and incessant.
Let's break down those rhythms. Perennial means lasting for a long or apparently infinite time, continually recurring.
Like a perennial plant that survives the winter and blooms again every single spring. But in an academic text, you usually see it applied to societal issues, like the lack of adequate funding is a perennial problem in the public education system. It's an infinite loop. It just keeps coming back year after year.
Right. It's a constant underlying cycle. Now, contrast that with sporadic, occurring at irregular intervals or only in a few places, scattered and unpredictable.
So if a region only receives sporadic rainfall, agriculture becomes incredibly difficult because you can never predict when the water is coming.
Exactly. Perennial is a predictable cycle. Sporadic is entirely random. And then we have the third, rhythm incessant.
Continuing without pause or interruption, and almost always referring to something highly unpleasant. Like the incessant noise from the construction site next door made it impossible for me to record this deep dive.
So we have 3 completely different temporal realities here. The infinite predictable loop of the perennial, the chaotic unpredictability of the sporadic, and the relentless, unbroken, maddening drumbeat of the incessant. Choosing the right one completely changes the tone of your essay.
Okay, let's look at moments in time in history. I want to talk about the word unprecedented. It means never done or known before in all of history. Like the invention of the internet allowed for an unprecedented level of global communication. But I mean, I feel like I hear this word on the news every single day.
You do, and it is vastly overused in casual conversation and modern journalism. People use it to mean surprising or rare.
Exactly.
But in academia, this word demands absolute respect. If a historian or a scientist calls an event unprecedented, they are staking their reputation on the fact that the timeline of human history has literally zero prior record of this occurring.
So as a test taker, I shouldn't say, like a local mayor winning an election by a large margin is unprecedented.
No, absolutely not. That is just rare. The splitting of the atom was unprecedented. Use it sparingly, and it hits with massive force.
Good to know. Now let's look at transience, lasting only for a short time, staying or working in a place for only a brief period before moving on. Like a university city.
Yes, a perfect example.
The population is highly transient, consisting mostly of students who live there for 4 years, get their degree, and immediately leave. But wait, hold on.
What's the problem?
Well, if we compare transient to ephemeral, the cherry blossom word we just talked about, they both essentially mean short-lived, right?
Broadly speaking, yes.
So if I'm writing an essay, how do I know which one to pick? Won't I sound silly if I mix them up?
That is an excellent linguistic catch, and yes, mixing them up is a classic intermediate trap. Let's look at the mechanics. Ephemeral usually relates to the lifespan or the very existence of a thing. The cherry blossom blooms and then it physically dies. Its existence is ephemeral.
Okay.
Transient, however, implies movement across a space. The Latin root trans means across.
Like transit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The university students don't cease to exist after 4 years. They don't die like the flower. They simply move on to another location. Their presence in that specific city is what is temporary. Migratory birds are transient. A sunset is ephemeral.
The students pack up their ubiquitous smartphones and transiently move away. I love it.
Very clever.
All right, rounding out our scale and growth adjectives. We have exponential, archaic, and minuscule. Let's start with exponential.
A massive multiplying rate of growth. Like the 20th century saw an exponential increase in the world's population.
A lot of people use this to just mean fast. But mathematically, that's wrong, right?
Completely wrong. Exponential doesn't just mean fast. It means the rate at which it is growing is also growing.
Right.
If I give you $2 a day, your wealth is growing fast, but it's a flat rate. If your wealth doubles every single day, 2, 4, 8, 16, that is exponential. It's the snowball rolling down the hill, getting larger and faster simultaneously.
Got it. Let's go all the way back in time to archaic. Very old or old-fashioned, belonging to an ancient period of history. Linguists study archaic languages to understand cultural evolution.
The Greek root archaeos means ancient. You'll see this a lot in anthropology passages.
And to finish our scale category, we go to the absolute bottom minuscule. Extremely tiny or microscopic in size or amount.
Yeah.
The chemical reaction is triggered by a seemingly minuscule amount of radiation.
And here's a major test-taking tip for the listener regarding these scale words. Standardized tests love to use adjectives of scale to trick you in the multiple choice section.
Really? How so?
So the reading passage might state that a minuscule amount of bacteria survived the sterilization process. Then, in the multiple choice answers, one option will say, the sterilization process failed to kill a significant portion of the bacteria.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. A panicked test taker will remember that some bacteria survived and just click that answer. But minuscule directly contradicts significant portion. If you don't know the exact scale of the adjective, you will fall for the trap.
Wow. From the exponential growth of billions of people to the minuscule trigger of an atomic reaction, we really have covered the entire scale of the universe here.
We have. Which perfectly sets up the narrative transition into section 3. We've measured time, we've measured scale. Now, what happens when we place human beings inside that vast scale?
We get civilizations, we get anthropology, politics, and the incredibly complex power dynamics of living together. We get the invisible architectures that govern society. Welcome to section 3, nouns of society and structure.
The words in this section are heavy hitters. These are the structural nouns you absolutely need to analyze history, economics, and sociology.
Let's start with the invisible architectures of life. The first word is one of my favorites, paradigm. A typical example, pattern, or model of something. A worldview underlying the theories and methodology of a particular scientific subject.
It is arguably one of the most powerful nouns in academic writing.
But let me ask you this. If I'm writing a sociology essay, why use a heavy, somewhat clunky word like paradigm instead of just saying pattern or trend? Let's say I'm writing about how everyone is shifting from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Isn't that just an economic trend?
If you call it a trend, you are drastically understating the historical impact of what is happening. A trend is everyone deciding to wear a certain style of winter jacket or a new social media app getting popular. A paradigm is far more foundational. It is the entire operating system of a society or a scientific discipline.
Like an operating system.
Yes! Think about astronomy before Nicholas Copernicus. The absolute accepted reality, the paradigm, was that the Earth was the center of the universe. Every mathematical equation, every religious doctrine, every navigation chart was built on top of that specific foundation.
Right. It was just accepted as total fact.
When Copernicus proved the Earth revolved around the sun, he didn't just introduce a new trend in astronomy, he shattered the entire foundation. That is a paradigm shift.
So a paradigm shift means literally everything built on top of it has to be demolished and rebuilt. The economic shift to renewable energy isn't just a new product on the market. It changes geopolitical power, global infrastructure, the very way we design cities. It is a paradigm.
Exactly. It's the foundation of the house, not the paint color on the walls.
That makes perfect sense. Our next structural noun is hierarchy, a system or organization in which people or groups are ranked one above the other according to status or authority.
Whether you're studying biology and analyzing the strict social hierarchy of an alpha wolf pack, or you are in a business class analyzing a corporate ladder, hierarchy is the vertical measurement of power.
And speaking of power, that moves us directly into the struggle for control. We have two incredibly important words here that are often pitted against each other in historical texts: autonomy and hegemony.
The eternal tug of war of human history.
Let's start with autonomy, the right or condition of self-government, independence and freedom from external control. You see this constantly in indigenous studies or post-colonial literature. The indigenous tribe fought for decades to maintain cultural autonomy over their native lands.
It's the core desire to govern oneself, to be the author of your own laws.
Pitted directly against hegemony, leadership, dominance, or absolute control, especially by one country or social group over others. During the Cold War, the two superpowers battled for global political hegemony. Now, I want to go deep on this one because I feel like people just use it as a fancy synonym for military power.
And they would be wrong to do so. If we look closely at hegemony, especially as it was conceptualized by political philosophers in the 20th century, it's not just about having a strong army that can beat up another army.
What is it then?
It is a suffocating, almost invisible level of influence where the dominant group controls not just the politics and the economics, but the cultural narrative, the educational systems, and the values of the subordinate groups.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Think about the Roman Empire. Yes, they had a massive military, but Roman hegemony meant that conquered territories eventually started speaking Latin, wearing Roman clothes, adopting Roman laws, and aspiring to be Roman citizens.
Oh, wow.
The dominance becomes so complete that the conquered people participate in their own subjugation. That is hegemony.
That's intense. So autonomy is fighting for your own identity, and hegemony is when a superpower rewrites your identity to match theirs.
Precisely. If you can drop an analysis of hegemony into a political science essay, the grader will immediately recognize you as an advanced thinker.
Let's move from power to population. How do we measure the people caught in these systems? We use demography and stratification.
Demography is the statistical study of human populations. It's the raw numerical data of society births, deaths, income, disease rates.
So if a text says, changes in the country's demography show a rapidly aging population and a declining birth rate, it's just presenting the numerical reality.
Yes. But stratification is what happens when that population gets divided. It is the arrangement or classification of something into different layered groups.
And the source material we're looking at brilliantly points out that this word applies to both hard sciences and social sciences. You can talk about the stratification of rock layers in a geology passage, but you can also talk about social stratification in a metropolis, driven by severe wealth inequality.
It's such a visceral visual word. You can literally picture the distinct separated layers. In the Grand Canyon, you see the red rock, the white rock, the gray rock stacked on top of each other.
Right.
In a modern city, social stratification is the ultra-rich living in sky-high penthouses, the middle class in the suburbs, and the working class struggling in the industrial zones. The key to stratification is that the layers do not mix.
They are calcified. If you're born in a lower stratum, it's incredibly hard to move up. All right, the final group of societal nouns deals with agents of change and agreement. How do things move within these structures? We start with proliferation.
A rapid increase in numbers, a massive, sudden multiplication. The proliferation of fake news on social media is a major threat to modern democracy.
Now hold on. A few minutes ago, we talked about the word exponential. Doesn't proliferation mean the exact same thing, just really fast growth?
Another great trap to avoid. Notice how they function grammatically and conceptually. Exponential describes the mathematical rate of growth. It's an adjective. You can have exponential growth of something positive, like clean energy.
Right.
Proliferation is the noun representing the chaotic spread of the thing itself. It implies a kind of uncontrollable, messy scattering, almost like a virus or weed.
Uncontrollable scattering.
Yeah.
Yeah, you rarely hear about the proliferation of world peace. It's usually the proliferation of nuclear weapons or the proliferation of invasive species.
Exactly. It carries a slightly alarming connotation.
That brings us to our next agent of change catalyst, a substance that increases the rate of a chemical reaction without itself undergoing any permanent chemical change. Or, in a broader sense, an event or person that causes a sudden massive change.
What's great about this vocabulary list is that it explicitly acknowledges how a term originating in hard chemistry like a catalyst in a beaker has been perfectly adopted by historians and sociologists.
The assassination of the Archduke acted as the catalyst for the outbreak of World War I. The tension was already there. All the alliances were built. The gunpowder was stacked. The assassination was just the match dropped into the powder keg. It didn't create the war out of thin air, but it catalyzed the reaction.
Briefly put.
Now, what happens when things don't add up? We look for a discrepancy, an illogical or suspicious lack of compatibility or similarity between two or more facts. The auditor noticed a massive discrepancy between the company's reported profits and their actual bank accounts.
A discrepancy isn't just a minor typo or a small error. It is a glaring red flag. It's the math not adding up in a way that demands an immediate, rigorous investigation.
And finally, our last societal noun, bringing everyone back together, consensus, a general agreement reached by a group as a whole. Despite years of debate, the scientific community has finally reached a consensus on the causes of global warming.
I always tell my students to appreciate the absolute weight of that word.
Yeah.
Because getting a group of human beings to reach a consensus on what to eat for dinner is hard enough. Getting the global scientific community, a group of people who are literally trained to scrutinize, challenge, and refute each other for a living, to reach a consensus is a monumental achievement.
It really is a rare and powerful state of agreement. Okay, let's take a breath. We've built the structures of human society. We have our hierarchies, our hegemonies, our stratifications, our paradigms. But here's the major narrative pivot. For Section 4, human beings are deeply flawed.
Yeah.
And so the arguments, the theories, and the data they produce are also deeply flawed.
They absolutely are, which means you can't just accept a theory because it uses big words or sounds authoritative. You have to know how to evaluate its foundation.
And that is exactly what Section 4 is all about. Evaluating evidence and truth. How do we actually judge the quality of the information swirling around these societies? We start with the ultimate battle in modern science, data versus deception. Let's look at empirical.
Empirical means based on, concerned with, or verifiable by observation, data, or physical experience rather than theory or pure logic.
The professor's argument was weak because it lacked empirical evidence to support its claims.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the gold standard of the scientific method. A theory can be beautiful, it can be mathematically elegant, it can sound completely logical in a philosophical debate.
Sure.
But if you cannot observe it in the physical world, if you cannot gather empirical data through a telescope, a microscope, or a field study, it remains just a theory.
It's the ultimate reality check. Like, can I touch it? Can I measure it? If the answer is no, it's not empirical. Now contrast that with its dark opposite, fallacious.
Based on a mistaken belief, logically flawed or deceptive.
The example here from the source is highly relevant to political science passages. The politician's argument relied on a fallacious assumption that all crime is caused by poverty.
This is a critical distinction for the listener to grasp because a fallacious argument is not the same as a simple lie.
Wait, it's not.
No, a lie is just making up a fake fact. A fallacious argument might actually sound incredibly persuasive. It might appeal to our emotions or our biases. It might even contain a kernel of truth.
Let's unpack that example. Why is it fallacious to say poverty causes crime? I mean, poverty obviously contributes to crime, doesn't it?
It absolutely contributes, which is exactly why the argument sounds persuasive. But the structural logic is broken. Claiming it is the only cause, ignoring organized crime, white-collar corporate fraud, crimes of passion, is a logical fallacy of oversimplification. You've built a house on a cracked foundation.
So we have empirical data fighting fallacious deception. Next up, we move from the extremes of truth to the gray areas. Reasonable versus realistic. We have plausible and pragmatic.
Let's look at plausible, seeming reasonable, probable, or likely to be true.
While we cannot prove it entirely, the historian's theory about the location of the lost city is highly plausible.
Plausible is a fascinating middle ground in academia. You don't have the empirical proof yet, you haven't dug up the city, you don't have the pottery shard.
Right, so it's not empirical.
Exactly. But all the surrounding evidence, the ancient maps, the satellite imagery of the soil, makes it a highly reasonable postulation. It's not a wild guess, it is plausible.
And then we have pragmatic. Dealing with things sensibly and realistically in a way that is based on practical rather than theoretical considerations.
I love this word. It is the ultimate anti-philosophy word.
Instead of proposing a utopian society where money doesn't exist, the economists offered a pragmatic solution to the immediate housing crisis.
The pragmatic approach does not care about what is ideally perfect or theoretically beautiful. It only cares about what actually works in the messy, compromised reality of the real world. Policymakers have to be pragmatic.
Okay, now we enter the nuance of meaning and value. This is where a lot of test takers get tripped up. The first word is ambiguous, open to more than one interpretation, having a double meaning, unclear. The ending of the novel is highly ambiguous, leaving the reader to decide if the hero survived or died.
Ambiguity is context-dependent. In literature or art, ambiguity is often a deliberate, beautiful choice. It invites the audience to participate.
That makes sense.
In a chemistry lab, however, ambiguity is your worst enemy. If your methodology is ambiguous, your empirical data is useless.
That's a great point. Now, I want to slow down and look very closely at these next two words because they are incredibly tricky. We have inherent and intrinsic. I'll be honest, I have definitely used these interchangeably in the past. How do we keep them straight?
It's one of the most common mistakes even native speakers make, but mastering the distinction is a hallmark of C2 vocabulary. Let's break down the exact mechanics. Inherent is defined as existing in something as a permanent, essential, or characteristic attribute.
The example given is there is an inherent risk of injury in extreme sports like rock climbing.
Right. You cannot separate the risk from the act of climbing a jagged cliff face with a rope. If you remove the risk entirely, you aren't rock climbing anymore. You're just walking on a sidewalk. The danger is a physical, unavoidable reality of the activity itself. It is inherent.
Okay, so inherent is a permanent physical or structural attribute. Now, what about intrinsic?
Intrinsic also means belonging naturally or essential, but in high-level academic writing, it is very often used in relation to abstract value or motivation.
The example is, gold has almost no real practical use for survival, but humans have always assigned it an intrinsic value.
Exactly. Let's look at the difference. The danger of rock climbing is inherent to gravity. You can't argue with gravity. But the value of gold, or the value of a piece of paper with a president's face on it.
Yeah, money is just paper.
That value is intrinsic to human psychology, economics, and shared belief systems. We believe it has deep natural worth, even if you can't eat it or build a house with it.
Oh, that is a beautiful nuance. So a poisoned dart frog has an inherent toxicity. It will physically kill you.
Okay.
But a rare painting has an intrinsic beauty and value that human beings just sort of project onto it.
Precisely. If you can deploy those two words correctly in a sociology or economics essay, you will absolutely stand out to whoever is reading it.
That really clears it up. Okay, our final group in the evidence and truth section, depth and bias. We have profound, esoteric, and objective. Let's start with profound.
Very great or intense, showing great knowledge or deep insight. The invention of the printing press had a profound impact on the literacy rates of Europe.
I feel like profound is the opposite of superficial. It means the impact wasn't just a surface-level ripple, it reached all the way down to the deepest roots of society and actually changed the soil.
That's a great visual. And next we have esoteric, intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with a highly specialized knowledge or interest.
The medical journal was filled with esoteric terminology that the general public could not understand.
Ironically, much of the academic arsenal we are discussing today might seem esoteric to someone entirely outside of the university system.
That's so true.
Esoteric knowledge is guarded knowledge. It's the secret handshake of a specific discipline.
We are cracking the esoteric code right now. And finally, the ultimate goal of evaluating evidence objective, not influenced by personal feelings, interpretations, or prejudice in considering and representing facts.
A journalist's primary duty is to provide an objective report of the events without political bias.
which is, frankly, easier said than done.
Almost impossible, really. But the pursuit of objectivity is the holy grail of both journalism and science. It is the arduous process of stripping away your own paradigm, your own biases, to try and see the empirical truth of what is actually happening.
Which brings us to our final summit. We have evaluated all the evidence, we've stripped away our biases, and we arrive at Section 5, movement, change, and transformation. The masterclass notes emphasize a universal truth found in all natural sciences and all dense reading passages. Absolutely nothing stays the same.
It's the law of entropy. Everything, whether it's a chemical compound, an endangered animal species, or a massive human empire, is in a constant state of movement, decay, or transformation.
Let's start with the rhythms of movement. We have oscillate and fluctuate.
To oscillate means to move or swing back and forth at a regular speed, or to waver between two differing opinions. The political climate of the country tends to oscillate between conservative and liberal leadership every decade.
And we must immediately contrast that with fluctuate, to rise and fall irregularly in number or amount. Due to the unpredictable weather, the price of agricultural goods will fluctuate wildly this year. Okay, I'm going to struggle with this one. If my weight goes up and down over the holidays, am I oscillating or fluctuating?
You are fluctuating. Let's look at the exact specific distinction. Think of a pendulum on a grandfather clock. It oscillates. It is a regular, mathematically predictable, rhythmic swing back and forth, left, right, left, right.
Like a heartbeat.
Yes, a steady heartbeat oscillates. Fluctuation, however, is the chaotic unpredictability of a seismograph during an earthquake, or the jagged line of the stock market graph. It's irregular. It might go up a little, down a lot, up a massive amount, down a tiny bit.
The pendulum versus the jagged line. Great visual. So a political system that swaps parties every election oscillates, but the price of Bitcoin fluctuates.
Exactly. Now let's look at how things move in relation to each other. Coming together and breaking apart. We have coalesce and disperse.
To coalesce means to come together to form one single mass or whole. Over millions of years, the scattered dust and gas in the early solar system began to coalesce into solid planets.
It's the slow gravitational pull of scattered pieces merging into a unified entity.
And the opposite is to disperse, to distribute or spread over a wide area, to scatter. When the violent storm hit, the massive crowd of protesters quickly began to disperse.
The unified whole breaking apart and scattering in every possible direction.
We move now to the darker side of transformation, decay, and destruction. We have three distinct stages here: eradicate, stagnate, and deteriorate.
Let's start with the absolute extreme. To eradicate means to completely destroy or put an end to something, to pull it up by the roots.
The global vaccination program successfully managed to eradicate the smallpox virus.
Eradicate is an absolute. You aren't mitigating the virus, you aren't suppressing it, you are wiping its very existence off the face of the earth entirely. And here's another classic trap for test takers.
Weigh it on me.
If you were reading a passage about an environmental policy, and the author says the policy aims to reduce carbon emissions, but the multiple choice question asks if the policy will eradicate pollution, that is a trap. Do not click it. Eradicate means 0% remains. Reduce means there's still some left.
That is exactly why we need this precision. Now contrast that total destruction with slower forms of decay. We have stagnate. To cease developing, flowing, or moving. To become completely inactive or dull. Without any new investment or innovation, the country's economy began to stagnate.
Think of a pool of water that gets cut off from the main rushing river. It doesn't necessarily disappear, but it just sits there, trapped, unable to move forward. It becomes a stagnant pond.
And finally, deteriorate. To become progressively worse in quality or condition over time. Exposure to harsh, direct sunlight caused the ancient painting to rapidly deteriorate.
Stagnation is simply a lack of forward movement. It's frozen. Deterioration is the active, progressive crumbling of the foundation. The painting is physically losing its integrity, flaking away day by day.
We are at the final three words, the final transformations. We have metamorphosis, diverge, and converge.
Metamorphosis is a profound biological or physical change in form from one stage to the next.
The caterpillar undergoes a complete biological metamorphosis inside the chrysalis to become a butterfly.
It is entirely reshaped. It is no longer the thing it was. It is a total structural rebirth.
Our second to last word is diverge, to separate from another route and go in a different direction. Humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestor, but their evolutionary paths diverged millions of years ago.
Picture a single road coming to a fork in the woods, splitting into two distinct, separate paths that will never meet again.
And the final word of our academic arsenal, bringing everything full circle and back together, converge. To come together from different directions to eventually meet at a single unified point. The three major rivers converge in the valley, creating a massive fertile delta.
The many paths becoming one.
We did it. We actually did it. 50 high-level academic words. I am breathing a massive sigh of relief, and I'm sure you, the listener, are too. That was a towering cliff face of vocabulary we just scaled.
It is an immense amount of information to process. We covered everything from the mechanics of argument to the literal formation of the universe.
But here's the secret strategy, the ultimate relief for the listener. You do not need to memorize and use all 50 of these words in a single exam essay or cram them all into one boardroom presentation. In fact, if you did that, you would sound completely unnatural. You'd sound like a walking dictionary.
Absolutely. That is the wrong way to use an arsenal. You don't fire every weapon at once. The secret hack, the exact thing that automated grading algorithms on the TOEFL and human admissions officers at universities are actively looking for, is simply the ability to strategically deploy a few of these terms naturally into your argument.
Strategic deployment. I like that.
If you are writing an essay and you catch yourself writing "the data proves the theory" and you actively swap it out for "the empirical data corroborates the theory," well, you have just won the game. If you use catalyst instead of start, if you use mitigate instead of fix. Weaving in just 5 or 6 of these words across a 300-word essay is often enough to bump a score from a struggling intermediate 20 to a perfect 30. It instantly, undeniably signals C2 proficiency.
It's about precision, not overwhelming firepower. We want to give you a challenge today, a call to action. Choose 3 words from this academic arsenal we just unpacked and construct one complex academic sentence in your head.
The example provided in the masterclass curriculum was fantastic. It used 3 words seamlessly. The ubiquitous nature of smartphones has been a catalyst for a profound shift in human communication.
3 powerful words, 1 elegant, undeniable thought. Try it yourself. Take 3 words we discussed today, maybe hegemony, empirical, and paradigm. Build a sentence. See how it feels to wield that level of intellectual precision.
You know, before we wrap up this deep dive, spending all this time dissecting these words leaves me with a lingering philosophical question. One that isn't on any vocabulary test, but feels essential to this entire journey.
Ooh, I love a lingering question. What is it?
We know these 50 words will help you hack a grading algorithm. We know they will impress a university admissions board or a corporate client. But does acquiring this academic arsenal actually change how you think?
What do you mean? Like rewiring your brain?
Exactly. When you learn the exact parameters of a word like hegemony or paradigm, do you start seeing invisible power structures in your everyday life that you were completely blind to before? When you learn the difference between mitigate and eradicate, do you start analyzing the news differently? Does academic language merely give you the tools to describe the world, or does acquiring it actively transform the way you perceive reality?
Wow, that is a massive question to chew on. Does the tool change the builder? I think it has to. Once you know what a paradigm shift is, you can't stop looking for the next one. You know, at the start of this deep dive, we talked about standing at the bottom of a sheer cliff face, looking up at the daunting walls of global academia with nothing but conversational twigs in our hands.
They did. It was a bleak picture.
Well, you aren't standing at the bottom anymore. You've got the pittance, you've got the ropes, and you have the precise structural grip you need to climb. The cliff hasn't changed. Academia is still dense and complex. But your ability to conquer it, your arsenal definitely has. Keep climbing, keep exploring, and we will see you on the next deep dive. Imagine trying to build this massive towering skyscraper, right? But the only tool you have in your toolbox is a little plastic toy hammer.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is not going to end well.
No, it's really not. I mean, you might be able to tap a few finishing nails into some drywall, but like constructing a heavy steel framework, that is completely out of the question.
Absolutely. The whole foundation would just crumble the second you try to add a second floor.
Exactly. And the thing is, for everyone listening, we do this exact same thing when we try to construct a really complex, high-stakes argument using just, basic everyday vocabulary. We are basically attempting to build a skyscraper of logic with a toy hammer.
Yeah.
And it just results in a complete structural language failure.
Yeah, and it creates this massive disconnect between how smart you actually are and how you're perceived by other people.
Right.
Because when you have this really sophisticated idea in your head, but you only have basic words to express it, the idea itself literally shrinks to fit your vocabulary.
That is such a good way to put it. Well, welcome to today's Deep Dives. We are exploring a super fascinating masterclass transcript today. It's titled The Academic Arsenal, C2 Vocabulary for Advanced English Mastery.
Which sounds intense, but it's really incredibly practical.
Oh, totally. The mission for today is to completely upgrade your linguistic toolbox. The source material outlines the exact vocabulary you need to score, say, a 110 plus on the TOEFL or a band 9 on the IELTS.
Which is top tier.
Yeah, the highest. But even beyond exams, whether you are prepping for a major presentation or you just want to sound incredibly sharp in your next big meeting, this deep dive is your blueprint. It's how you move from just intermediate English into true C2 fluency.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have 50 advanced words to get through today, spanning categories 6 through 10 of this arsenal, and they fundamentally change how we construct arguments.
And setting a baseline here is really crucial for anyone listening, because what this material proves is that true fluency isn't just about, throwing big words into a sentence to sound smart.
Right. Nobody likes that person.
Exactly. It's actually about signaling to a grader or a colleague or a client that you are an academic and professional tier. You're not just a student anymore.
Right.
And you achieve that by mastering the specific language of logic, of attitude, and of transition.
So let's start where all good arguments begin, which is figuring out how and why things happen. Because you cannot make a compelling point if you can't accurately describe cause and effect.
No, you really can't.
That brings us to category 6 from the text, which is the engine of the argument. Basic words like cause or guess, they just severely limit the scope of your logic. But using words with surgical precision changes the entire dynamic.
It really does. Like, take the verb to elicit.
Okay.
This means drawing out a response or a fact from someone in reaction to your own actions. So think of a professor delivering a highly controversial lecture that's designed specifically to elicit a strong emotional debate from the students.
Oh, I see. So it's not an accident.
Right. Notice the intention embedded in that word. The lecture didn't just casually cause a debate. The professor actively pulled that debate out of the audience.
That makes total sense. Like,
Yeah.
if you were managing a team and you want feedback, you don't just get feedback. You structure a meeting to elicit honest responses.
Exactly. You're driving the action. Then we have to engender, which describes causing or giving rise to a feeling or situation.
Okay, give me an example for that one.
Sure. So you could say a sudden economic crash engendering a deep sense of panic among global investors.
Wow, yeah. The imagery there feels almost, biological. It doesn't mean the crash instantly made everyone panic like flipping a light switch.
Right.
It means the crash created an environment where that panic could just grow and spread.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. And, if we need to describe something bad happening really suddenly, we don't just say it started. We say it was precipitated.
Precipitated, okay.
Yeah, to precipitate means to cause an event, usually a really negative one, to happen suddenly or prematurely. Like a royal assassination precipitating the outbreak of a massive international war.
Man, that word carries so much physical momentum. It paints this picture of a situation that was already unstable, like balancing on a cliff edge, and this one specific event just pushed it over.
Exactly. You use precipitate when you want your reader to understand that disaster was already looming, but one single catalyst sped up the timeline.
Got it. And we also have a word for the very end of a long process, right? We don't just say something finished. The source says we should use to culminate.
Yes, to culminate, reaching a climax or the highest point of development.
Right, like decades of quiet, intense civil rights protests finally culminating in the passing of new equality laws. The word itself just carries the weight of all those years of effort.
It really does. These verbs do incredible heavy lifting for your logic. They literally map out the timeline of an event. But we also need to look at the invisible logic of how we draw conclusions, which is where the mental mechanics of language get really nuanced.
Yeah, and actually, I want to push back or at least ask for clarification on a classic point of confusion in this section.
Okay, Relay. Yeah.
So the source outlines the verbs to infer and to imply. And people mix these up constantly. Let me try an analogy to see if I have the mechanism right here.
Go for it.
So if I am a detective looking at some ancient pottery buried near a river, I infer that the tribe relied on fishing based on that physical evidence. Like, I'm concluding information from reasoning.
Right, you're doing the mental work based on clues.
But if an author writes an entire book about how modern technology makes humans isolated without ever directly stating it, the author is implying it. So basically, the evidence implies, and the detective infers.
Yes. The direction of the information flow in your analogy is perfectly aligned with the definitions. The author is broadcasting the suggestion they are implying. You, sitting on the receiving end as the reader or the detective, you're catching that suggestion and drawing the logical conclusion. You are inferring.
Okay, awesome. I finally got that straight.
What's fascinating here is how these specific verbs describe the invisible mental processes of a researcher. Another powerful word in this category is deduce.
Right.
A geologist examining radioactive isotopes in a rock can deduce the exact age of a mountain. They are drawing a logical conclusion from concrete evidence. It just elevates the action from just guessing to active, precise thinking based on data.
It sounds so much more professional.
And sometimes you have to describe when that thinking leads to disagreement or even failure. The verb to concur means to agree with a finding. Like, a lecturer might state they do not concur with a reading passage that claims a particular diet is healthy.
Okay.
Or consider to nullify, where an invasive species completely nullifies a government's efforts to save local birds.
So it totally invalidates the previous effect.
Yeah.
It just reduces all that effort to zero.
Exactly.
The source also mentions the word manifest, meaning to display or show a quality physically. Like virus symptoms beginning to manifest. You are taking something invisible and describing the exact moment it becomes visible.
Yes, exactly.
So once you have established how things happen and the logic behind them, you naturally have to evaluate them. You have to judge the nature of the situation.
Right, which brings us to the next step.
Yeah, this leads directly to category 7. Identifying the tone of an author or the difficulty of a subject.
The flavor of thought. Because when you are taking a high-level exam or reading a complex industry report, identifying the author's attitude is half the battle.
Oh, for sure.
Let's look at how we describe difficulty. We all rely on the word hard way too often. Upgrading to arduous changes the entire feeling of the sentence.
Arduous.
Yeah, arduous involves or requires strenuous effort. Migrating birds undertake an arduous journey across the ocean every single winter.
Just saying the word arduous sounds exhausting.
Right.
It rolls off the tongue so heavily. It really paints a visceral picture of a grueling, tiring effort. Calling a cross-ocean migration hard just makes it sound like a difficult math test, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But arduous makes it sound like a legitimate battle for survival.
Spot on. We also get words to describe how deeply concepts are intertwined, like inextricable.
Oh, that's a good one.
It means impossible to disentangle. For the ancient Maya, religion and astronomy were inextricably linked. You couldn't study one without studying the other.
Because if you try pulling those two concepts apart, you just destroy the foundation of both.
Exactly. That's the core mechanism of something being inextricable.
Okay, I want to zero in on two words from this category that seem, well, virtually identical to me at first glance. Intricate and convoluted.
Yeah, people struggle with those.
Right. Because if a spider spins this intricate web with complex geometric patterns, isn't that functionally the same as a student writing a convoluted essay? They both just mean highly complicated, don't they?
Well, they do share the definition of complexity, but they carry completely opposite emotional tones.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Intricate implies highly detailed, organized complexity. It is almost always positive, or at least neutral. A mechanical watch is intricate. All the tiny gears work together in harmony.
Okay, I see.
Convoluted, on the other hand, is extremely complex and incredibly difficult to follow. It is almost exclusively used negatively to describe confusing logic, bad writing, or a completely broken system.
Oh, wow. So an intricate machine is a marvel of engineering, but a convoluted machine is just a disaster that nobody can figure out how to operate.
Precisely. And that distinction is crucial if you are, say, critiquing a colleague's proposal. If you call their plan intricate, you're praising its depth. If you call it convoluted, you're basically telling them it's an unreadable mess.
Yeah, you probably don't want to mix those two up in an email to your boss.
Definitely not. And this connects directly to recognizing bias and attitude in reading passages or workplace communication. Having a vocabulary toolkit for identifying a speaker's mindset allows you to navigate arguments way more effectively.
Like recognizing when someone is being skeptical, having profound doubts or reservations, like a doctor who is highly skeptical of a new diet's medical benefits.
Right. Or identifying when a person is being dogmatic.
Dogmatic, that's a strong word.
It is. It describes someone who is inclined to lay down principles as incontrovertibly true, just completely refusing to consider other opinions. Think about a scientist who is so dogmatic in their historical beliefs that they refuse to even look at new contradictory evidence sitting right in front of them.
So they aren't just stubborn, their whole worldview is rigidly locked.
Exactly. It's a structural refusal to change.
We also have ambivalent, which the text defines as having mixed feelings or contradictory ideas about something. So a population might remain largely ambivalent about the rise of artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Because they see both the incredible benefits and the terrifying dangers simultaneously.
That's a perfect modern example. And you contrast that internal conflict with being apathetic, which means showing absolutely no interest, enthusiasm, or concern whatsoever.
Just totally checked out.
Yeah. Voter turnout might be historically low because the younger demographic feels completely apathetic toward the candidates. They don't have mixed feelings. They just simply do not care.
Here is where it gets really interesting for me. The word tenacious is used in the source to describe a researcher finally discovering a cure after years of relentless failure.
Tenacious, yeah.
Tenacious means tending to keep a firm hold of something, being highly persistent. And using that one specific word paints this incredibly vivid, almost cinematic picture of struggle and ultimate triumph. It captures a psychological state that a basic phrase like, "they didn't give up," completely fails to communicate.
It totally changes the entire emotional resonance of the sentence. It pulls the reader right into the researcher's mindset.
Yeah.
Oh, and before we transition out of this category, we have anomalous, deviating from what is standard, normal, or expected, like a sudden, highly anomalous spike in ocean temperatures.
Well, let's stick with that idea of things not fitting the mold, because the noun form of that anomaly is such a powerful structural tool. We've got the logic, we have the attitude, but what about the actual building blocks of the research itself?
Right, categories 8 and 9.
Exactly. These categories give us the nouns and verbs to map out these academic concepts. Imagine you find a fossil of a tropical fern buried deep under the ice in Antarctica. If you just call that weird or surprising in a meeting, it sounds entirely subjective.
Like an opinion.
Right. But labeling it a geographical anomaly fundamentally changes the weight of your observation.
It signals to your audience that this isn't just a random quirk. It is a specific data point that actively breaks the established scientific model. It demands to be addressed.
And when models break down like that, it often forces us to look at how we categorize things in the first place. That brings up another architectural concept from the text, the dichotomy.
Ah, yes.
When people try to make sense of a complex world, they often split things into two entirely opposed categories, like how we study the classic dichotomy between human emotion and cold, scientific logic.
And that's so useful in business, too. If you are arguing that a company's marketing strategy is failing because it focuses entirely on raw data and ignores human feeling, framing it as a dichotomy immediately demonstrates that you understand the deep structural conflict at play.
We also have nuance, a subtle difference in or shade of meaning, expression, or sound, like how basic translation software often fails to capture the cultural nuance of a poem.
Yeah, it misses the human element.
Right. And a word you will see constantly in medical, scientific, and business texts is efficacy.
Yes, efficacy.
The ability to produce a desired or intended result. Clinical trials are designed specifically to test the long-term efficacy of a new vaccine.
But we also need vocabulary to describe the people and the forces pushing these ideas forward. A proponent is a person who advocates for a theory, proposal, or project. So proponents of renewable energy arguing fiercely for increased wind and solar infrastructure.
Okay, yeah.
And they are often driven by an impetus, the force that makes something happen or happen more quickly. The discovery of gold was the primary impetus for the massive westward migration to California.
Okay, let me try to play with a couple of these concepts together, specifically premise and ramification, just to see how they interact.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so a premise is a foundational statement, like a previous proposition from which another is inferred. An entire global economic theory might be built on the premise that all humans make rational financial choices at all times.
Which is a remarkably flawed assumption.
Exactly the point. So if your underlying premise is flawed, the ramifications, which are the complex or unwelcome consequences of an action or event, they are inevitable. A flawed premise leads straight to severe global ramifications like, say, a catastrophic banking collapse.
That is a fantastic way to connect those two nouns. It perfectly illustrates how the architecture of an argument stands or falls based on its foundation.
Thanks. It helps me visualize it.
We also have trajectory, which is the developmental path of a process over time. If the current trajectory of deforestation continues uninterrupted, the entire ecosystem vanishes.
And finally, for the nouns, an amalgamation.
Oh, great word.
The action, process, or result of combining or uniting multiple things into one coherent structure. A new city's culture acting as a vibrant amalgamation of indigenous traditions and European colonial influences.
Beautiful.
But having the nouns is only half the battle. We need the verbs of discovery and constraint. We need to describe how these nouns actually interact with each other.
Yes.
Let's look at how things hold each other back. To hinder creates difficulties resulting in delay. Dense fog severely hindered a rescue team's ability to find lost hikers.
While to inhibit, which is incredibly common in biology and chemistry, means to restrain or prevent an action or process. Cold temperatures naturally inhibit the growth of dangerous bacteria in food. So hinder is about slowing down, inhibit is about biological or chemical prevention.
Oh, that's a really subtle difference. We also have to constrain, which is severely restricting the scope, extent, or activity of something. An architect's creative vision being severely constrained by a strict building budget.
Right.
When you say an architect is constrained, you aren't just saying they lack funds. You are describing a physical boundary placed around their creativity. The budget is acting as a literal wall, holding their ideas inside a box.
Yeah, it's very structural. Now, on the flip side of holding things back, we have words for spreading or growing.
Right.
To propagate means to spread and promote an idea widely. A political party using underground radio broadcasts to propagate revolutionary ideologies.
Or to foster, which is encouraging or promoting the development of something positive. A teacher designing group projects specifically to foster collaboration among students.
And to assimilate. Taking in information, ideas, or culture and understanding it fully. An immigrant population taking years to fully assimilate into a new cultural landscape, blending their traditions with the new environment.
We also see words of change and clarity. Viruses mutate rapidly to survive new medical treatments. Heavy academic jargon can completely obscure or conceal an author's actual argument.
Which happens way too often.
Way too often. Whereas using brilliant historical examples can elucidate or make completely clear a complex theory of macroeconomics.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the scientific method outlined in the source, it is never enough to just conduct an experiment. That experiment must be able to be replicated by other independent scientists to be considered valid.
Right. It has to be copied exactly to prove it wasn't just a fluke.
Yes. That single verb is the absolute cornerstone of the entire scientific process.
Okay, so this brings us to the final puzzle piece. Because you can have the best logic using words like deduce or precipitate. You can have the perfect tone acting skeptical or identifying an arduous task. You can even have the right concepts, analyzing a dichotomy or testing the efficacy of a system.
Right.
But if you just glue all those brilliant high-level ideas together with basic transition words like but, also, or so, the whole structure crumbles.
It really does, and the source is incredibly strict about this final step. We are looking at Category 10 now, advanced transition words and adverbs. Using basic transitions in high-stakes writing or speaking is a massive missed opportunity.
Yeah.
The transitions are the steel beams connecting the floors of your argument.
So instead of saying but or despite, the text offers notwithstanding. Severe weather notwithstanding, the researchers continue their expedition into the jungle. It immediately elevates the authority of the sentence.
It sounds so much more professional.
Instead of, on the other hand, we use conversely, introducing a statement or idea which reverses one that has just been made. In the north, the climate is freezing. Conversely, the southern regions experience tropical heat all year.
And instead of saying until now, we have hitherto.
Hitherto.
Yeah, the new space telescope revealed galaxies that were hitherto completely unknown to science. It draws a hard line in history between what was known before and what is known now. We also get adverbs that define exactly how and when things happen, like subsequently, which just means afterwards. A factory polluted the river, and subsequently, the local fish population collapsed.
Invariably means in every single case or on every occasion, without fail. When natural habitats are completely destroyed, wildlife populations invariably decline. It leaves absolutely no room for exceptions.
And inherently, meaning in a permanent, essential, or characteristic way. Nuclear energy isn't inherently evil, but it is deeply dangerous if mismanaged. The danger is baked into its very nature.
Let me stop you on one of these transitions, though.
Oh, sure. What is it?
Well, the text lists the word ergo, meaning therefore. Honestly, doesn't saying ergo out loud sound a little, I don't know, robotic or overly formal? Like I'm trying to sound like a philosopher from the 1600s instead of someone in a modern boardroom.
That's a really fair point, and this raises an important question about context, which the source explicitly addresses. Ergo should never be thrown around casually for any simple result.
Right.
You wouldn't say, it's raining, ergo I need an umbrella. That sounds ridiculous.
Exactly.
It is specifically reserved for highly logical, inescapable conclusions. The example given in the text is perfect. A specific plant requires massive amounts of sunlight to survive. Ergo, it cannot grow in deep caves. It is the period at the end of a mathematical proof. It shows the examiner or the executive team that you understand airtight A to B logical flow.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's reserved for an ironclad proof, not just a casual replacement for the word so. There are a few more critical transitions in this category. We have moreover, which is a powerful upgrade for also, or in addition. The new software is incredibly fast. Moreover, it is completely free for all university students.
It adds significant weight to the additional point, making the second point feel like a bonus argument. Then there is albeit, meaning although or even if, the company finally managed to make a profit this quarter, albeit a remarkably small one.
And to wrap up the 100 words of this arsenal, we have erroneously.
Oh, great word to end on.
In a mistaken or incorrect way. For centuries, astronomers erroneously believed the Earth was the exact center of the universe. It is infinitely more academic and precise than simply saying they believed it wrongly.
Because it speaks to a systemic error in thinking rather than just a casual mistake.
Right. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? When we look at this entire academic arsenal we've been unpacking today, it means true fluency is about capturing the exact nuance of an idea and using the correct structural context to elevate your communication. It's an amalgamation of everything we've discussed: logic, tone, concept, and transition.
Exactly. You now possess this arsenal. Utilizing words like subsequently, invariably, or inherently tells your audience, whether that is an exam grader, a university professor, or a boardroom full of executives, that you are deeply in command of your subject matter.
Yep.
You aren't just reciting a list of memorized facts. You are architecting a sound, structurally flawless argument.
Which brings us to a final challenge for you, inspired directly by the question of the day found in the source material. The source challenged its students to write a 2-sentence argument using Category 10 transition words to see how it forces their logic to evolve.
I love this exercise.
It's so good. They gave the example. The invention of the automobile revolutionized global travel. Conversely, it subsequently created unprecedented levels of environmental pollution.
It is a phenomenal exercise in applying the architectural glue we've been talking about today.
It really is. So here is your challenge for the day. Think of a topic you are deeply passionate about right now. It could be your specific field of study, a personal hobby, or an industry trend you are currently following.
Just something you know well.
Right. In your head, try to form a 2-sentence argument about it using the words notwithstanding or moreover. Does forcing yourself to use these highly advanced transitions actually change the way you evaluate your own premise?
When you have to structure your thought around a word like notwithstanding, it forces you to acknowledge counter-evidence in a highly sophisticated way. It demands that your internal logic mature before you even speak the sentence out loud.
You aren't just building with a toy hammer anymore. You are working with precision steel. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the academic arsenal. Keep exploring the nuance of language, keep questioning the premise of the arguments around you, and take these tools into your next big meeting or essay. Let those words work for you. See you next time.